Good evening. Welcome to the regular Planning Commission meeting, Grand Blanc Township, April 7th, 2022. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Planning Commission members present this evening, we have Mr. Yancho, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Gellings, Mr. Bandersky, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Hoffman, and Mr. Bush. From our staff, we have Mr. Jeremy Smith, Planning and Zoning
Administrator?
everything.
Yep.
And then from our consultant, Giffords Webster, we have Mr. Wojciechowski. Okay. Next item on our agenda would be approval of this evening's agenda, and I understand there may be a change here, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to petition to have the old business for the future text amendments moved to the end of after all of the new business. And then also, on your agenda, there was an item left off, the SPR number 1100 under SLU 22-002. So that's a separate item. So we should have ABCD for new business.
So C would be the site plan review. Is that correct? C?
C would be the site plan review number 1100, and D would be the zoning change 674.
And then you're proposing the old business goes after item, we switch item 6 and 7, basically.
Yes.
Any objections to that?
No.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as amended for tonight's meeting.
Support. Motion by Mr. Anderson, support by Mr. Yancho. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Next item would be the approval of our minutes from March 3rd, 2022. Mr. Secretary, any?
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the draft of the meeting minutes for March 3rd, 2022, and found everything to be in order, so therefore I make a motion that we approve the minutes as stated, unless somebody has an objection.
Support. Motion by Mr. Bandersky to approve the minutes as presented. That was support by Mr. Bush. Any other discussion? If not, a vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity to address the Planning Commission on anything that we're not going to have a public hearing on. We do have a couple of public hearings scheduled this evening. There will be a public hearing where you have an opportunity regarding the proposed rezoning special land use on Dort Highway for a gas station. And there will also be a public hearing regarding some zoning text amendments. So if you're here for one of those two items, there'll be a time shortly here in the agenda. We'll get to that. But if there's anything else you would like to address the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman, the tri-park.
It does have, I'm sorry, I skipped right past that. The zoning case for rezoning for Tri-Park also will have a public hearing. So we got 3 public hearings on the agenda this evening. So if you're here for one of those 3, they'll come up shortly. If not, now would be the time to address the Planning Commission if you'd like to speak. Yes, sir. Name and address?
Jerry Haller, 8046 Pagels Drive, Grand Blanc. I think you answered my one question on the public hearing of the rezoning for the gas station. We can make public comments or question during that time? Okay. The other question I had is, it talks about mechanical equipment, section 3.6.R, and it says allow planning condition to permit mechanical equipment in a front yard. Can you tell me what that means? What is mechanical equipment in the front yard? What is the?
You're talking about the memorandum from Giffords Webster, right?
The zoning change
too?
Yes.
Yeah, the zoning change. That's going to be a public hearing later on the agenda, but the regulation will be to permit them in a side or rear yard.
What's mechanical equipment, or what do you?
Air conditioner or generator, that type of like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, mechanical.
That's, thank you.
Anyone else who would like to address the planning commission? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Eder, 7212 Porter Road. Is the,
Excuse me, your name, please.
Eder, 7,
Thank you.
okay. Is the future text amendment, I don't see that as being a public hearing. I'd speak on that now. It says nothing about a public hearing.
You talking about this?
Yes, you're at the board.
Yes, that is actually,
So are you wanting to speak on the items that are not part of the public hearing?
I would like to respond to, yeah, it's not part of the Giffel Webster consultant here for the text amendment on RV parking.
That's going to be covered at the public hearing on item D.
Item B, E, you moved it down then?
D is in David.
D is in David.
yeah, we inserted one other item.
Yeah, okay, so you moved it down and you're calling it a public.
Take a nap if you'd like, and
No, I'm gonna have to. I better not miss my program.
wake you up. All right, anyone else? All right, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back up to the planning commission. Next item would be, on our agenda is correspondence. Anyone have any correspondence? I didn't see anything in the packet. So then we will now move on to new business. Item, it will be, I guess, a 6A now. Zoning case 673, rezoning 3210 Tri-Park Drive from research development to light industrial is the request. Who's doing this one? Is this,
That's me. Do you want to have the applicant present first and then?
that'd be great if you want to kind of give us an overview of what you're planning to do here? What you're requesting, I guess?
I'm Lino Casper from Bricadam. The property consists of little over 6 acres. It's on Tri-Park. And what we like, it's the actual zoning now, it's research and development, and we like to rezone it to light industrial. That will make it the same zoning as the rest of the park, because most of the park there, it is zoned, light industrial, and we like to make it the same zoning. And it will be consistent also with the master plan. On the master plan, it is light industrial. Also, this property, the original site plan, it was approved for 4 buildings, about 6,000 square feet each. 2 of those buildings were built in the beginning of the 2000s, and there is still vacant land for another 2 buildings. And if we are granted the rezoning, it will make it less challenging for marketing to lease those buildings and to plan for building the rest of the buildings in there. That's all what I have to say.
Yeah, you can have a seat and we'll go through Mr. Jeremy's report.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is zoning case number 673, 3210 Tri-Park Drive, parcel number 12-16-100-033. The subject property is located at 3210 Tri-Park Drive between Reed and Grand Blanc Road. Parcel is approximately 6.2 acres, and it's the applicant's intent to rezone the parcel from research and development. Surrounding properties, the north is research and development, the east is Grand Blanc City, single-family residential, to the south is single-family residential, and to the west is light industrial. No site plans have been submitted at this time. There are a few criteria for rezoning. The first one is consistency with the goals and policies of future land use map. And the 2021 master plan and future land use map were approved in September of '21. This request is consistent with the newly adopted master plan and future land use map. Compatibility of the site's physical, geological, and hydraulical and other environmental features. There appears to be no conflict between the proposed development and the physical condition of the site. Item C, evidence that the applicant cannot receive a returnable return on investment. It's incumbent on the applicant to provide this information. Item D, Capality with all the potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district. Please refer to the list of permitted uses in light industrial that's in your packet. Item E, capacity for township utilities and services. There appears to be adequate services and utilities to serve the proposed use. Item F, capability of the street system to safely and effectively accommodate the expected traffic. The property fronts on Tri-Park Drive, and the whole area was designed as an industrial park. The road also exits out onto Door Highway. Item G, the apparent demand for the types of uses permitted in the requested zoning district. The applicant intends to develop the property with a use that is permitted as a special land use within as a permitted or special land use within the light industrial district. Item H, the boundary of the requested rezoning district are reasonable in relationship to surroundings and construction on the site. This parcel is large enough to meet the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. Item I, if a rezoning is appropriate, the requested zoning district considered to be more appropriate from the township perspective. The newly adopted future land use map indicates light industrial is an appropriate zoning for this parcel. Item J, the request for specific use is rezoning land more appropriate. This parcel will allow permitted and special land uses of all uses in light industrial district. Item K, the requested rezoning will not create an isolated unplanned spot zone. This rezoning does not create a spot zone due to the future land use map. The applicant has not requested and submitted for a rezoning in the last year. There's no other conditions and no other factors. So the Planning and Zoning Department would support a recommendation for approval based on the following reasons. Number one, the requested zoning is compatible with the surrounding land uses. And number two, the future land use map recommends for light industrial in the zoning district. Planning Commissioner's motion should be in the form of a recommendation to the Township Board.
Anything else from you, Mr. Smith?
None.
Any questions from Planning Commission?
No, I have not.
I've got one question. This won't make any difference in the screening requirements to the residential property, will it?
So the industrial, so each zoning district has its own zoning screening requirements.
Are they,
When they bring in a new site plan, which they, from my understanding, intend to do, they will have to bring the site up to today's standards and the zoning district standards.
so, I mean, do you know offhand what the difference is?
I don't off the top of my head. I know I'm assuming it's more
Yeah,
stringent.
Mr. Chairman, I was actually going to bring that up. Thanks for bringing it
Oh,
up.
thank you.
It does appear that light industrial has stricter, so moving it to that, taking care of the residential that's next to it, by moving it to it, the applicant is basically saying, I'm willing, and I know that I'll have to have stricter screening to get that under that, so, which is nice, that the residents are also taken care of, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a procedural comment. Basically, I noticed the petition for change of zoning is very incomplete, and in the future, I would like to see more detail on the, from the petitioner on why they think these zoning change is appropriate and needed. I mean, I think it's really hardly any information at all on that petition.
I don't know if the applicant wants to address that in any more detail.
Well, no, I was just actually addressing it more to our planning and zoning department, that rather than accepting the petition with a lot of NA, which I assume means not applicable, that we request that they give us more detail on the petition.
So you understand that this property's, it does end up getting rezoned to light industrial instead of research and development. The screening requirements that come with that district, you'd have to follow.
And I understand, and I know that the old site plan, which was approved, I know that it's not good anymore, and whatever is going to be done, we have to submit a new site plan with all the requirements, to comply with all the requirements, as per the ordinance. And we understand that there will be no additional screening and all that, and setback, the required setback and everything.
Mr. Bush?
My only comment is I noticed that it says it residential butts up to the city of Grand Blanc, and my question is, anybody contact the city? Are they aware of this rezone, or have they made any comment?
They get a, one of the notices, like we send out 300 feet within, go right to City Hall. We aren't required to notify every single parcel that butts up to this one.
And we got no response from the city?
No response from anybody.
Thank you.
Discussions, questions, comments? If not, I guess a motion would be, wait a minute. I'm a little ahead of myself. We got to open this up for public hearing. Please. Thank you. So, if anyone would like to address the planning commission regarding the zoning case 673 for Tri Park Drive, now would be the time. If anyone in the public would like to make comments? If not, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back up to the planning commission.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve case number 67, a recommendation to send to the board, excuse me, zoning case number 673 for the parcel at 3210 Tri Park Drive.
Support. There was a motion by Mr. Anderson, support by Mr. Hoffman. Any other discussion? Okay, vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda, special land use 22-002, 5313 South Dort Highway, for the purpose of constructing a gas station / convenience store. The applicant here would like to make an overview of what you're requesting.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Manor, 5800 Woodfield Parkway, Grand Blanc, Michigan. And I'm here on behalf of Bill Noshi, who's the owner of the property and operates several other developments like this in the city or in the township. And got architect extraordinaire John Costa here. And two gentlemen from the Larson Company, which they do a lot of the gas station development and building, and Chris Rosier from Marathon Flint. And I think it's pretty basic what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is take the old GBI. We've tried all kinds of things to make it work, and it hasn't worked. But we're going to make that into a C-store, put a canopy out front, and gas pumps, similar to what we did over on Hill Road. Any questions?
Well, Mr. Smith, they're here because a special land use is required for a gas station.
Correct.
I mean, that's the first item.
Yes.
Is there something you want to go over?
Yep, I've got a review that I'd like to present. So case number SLU 22-002, 5313 South Dort Highway. The applicant has both parcels for 12-04-552-018 and 019. Both parcels combined are approximately 1.7 acres. This zoning, as of today, is general commercial. Proposed use is for, to construct a Marathon gas station and convenience store, which includes two parcels totaling 1.17 acres. The site plan proposes to repurpose the old Grand Blanc Inn to an automobile convenience gasoline station featuring a convenience store and 8 fuel pumps. Automobile convenience gasoline stations are regulated as a special land use and require additional approval beyond site plan review. Following conditions are required per section 4.15 automobile convenience gasoline station. Number 1, there shall be a minimum lot frontage of 200 feet, and this standard has been met. Number 2, pump islands shall be a minimum of 40 feet from any public right-of-way line. Tanks and propane and petroleum products shall be set back at least 15 from any lot line, and this standard has been met. Item number 3, overhead canopy shall be set back at least 20 feet from the right-of-way, and the standard has been met. Number 4, access driveway shall meet standards of section 5.1. the standard has been met. Item 5, where adjoining a residential district, a solid 6-foot fence shall be installed and erected along the common lot line, and the standard has been met. We will go into that further in site plan review. Item 6, shall be no outdoor storage or display of vehicle components and parts, and this standard has been met. And I have in number 7, I've got a correction. Applicant must submit a pollution incidents protection plan, a PIP plan. That has not been submitted yet at this time. Item number 8, a traffic impact study shall be provided. Due to the proximity to M54 Dordt Highway, this will not be required. Item number 9, in the event that an automobile service station has been abandoned or terminated for a period of more than 1 year, all underground gasoline storage tanks shall be removed from the premises in accordance with the state requirements. The standard has been met, and that has also been included on the site plan. Item 10, any use involving maintenance or service or repair shall also meet standards for automobile maintenance and service establishment. This standard has been met due to no service or repair proposed on the site. Number 11 is for a neighborhood commercial district, and that is not applicable because this is a general commercial site. And number 12, gasoline station accessories and all their uses shall be required to meet the standards of this section, and the standard has been met. Planning and Zoning Department would support a recommendation for approval based on the following reasons. Number 1, the requested special land use is compatible with the surrounding land uses. And number 2, special land use standards for automobile convenience gas station have been met except for item 7. This item will need to be submitted before final site plan is given.
And I'd like to just address the PIP. We'd like to get approval based on us submitting that.
Contingent on it.
Yes, contingent, thank you.
Any questions from planning commission members?
I have one not related to the rezoning, but is there any plans to put in a charging station?
That's a great question. We've been working on that at both, or all 3 of the marathons, that the one at Grand Blanc and Dordt Highway, as well as the one on Hill Road, and this one would be as well, but that's kind of a little further down the road.
Well, by the time you get this one completed,
It might not be that further down the road. By that time, we might have it put together.
greater use for that.
And there's some incentives from Consumers Energy to help that along, so.
Thank you.
Presume that you've done your due diligence and there's at least a perceived need for this?
Yeah, the great question. I think if you want, Chris from Marathon Flint probably could address that better than me.
Chris Roser, Marathon Flint Oil Company, 9383 Oakmont Drive, Grand Blanc, Michigan. I'm also the fuel supplier, and everyone needs a nice new facility to go to. What is being proposed here is not just your gasoline fueling station. Bill brings more to the table than another place to pick up a Coke and fill up your car. So this place is more of the state of the new facilities that we're expecting, more market-driven type establishments as far as what you can get at a convenience store. It's not just a convenience store; it's a market. So, does it have a need? Absolutely. There's going to be a nice niche to fill here.
Just more out of curiosity, proximity to other gas stations?
So there isn't any. Pardon me? Yeah, there's nothing on that side of the road, all the way up Dordt Highway. And so it's, I mean, it makes sense, but like Chris said, what Bill does is he sprinkles magic dust and people love it. They make homemade stuff and sell it and so it's a destination. So the gas is just, the people they'll come for the gas because they're going there to get lunch or to pick up something to take home for dinner, if you guys are familiar with his other locations, they're above and beyond the standard C-store.
Your thinking is that as people head, I guess, north,
Yes,
that it's easier to come into your place and cross the road and go the other place.
yeah. It's even north, even bypassing Grand Blanc Road, and then, it's just a easier entrance to that site than the other one.
Comment, either one of you?
No, I was just kind of verifying where the location was.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I just wanted to point out, there is a gas station farther south on Dort Highway.
Yes, that's Bill's as well. And that's the same type of, basically the same type of, it's got the food castle, and a couple of years ago, we tore down the freestanding gas station and moved the pumps and made it so that they come into the store, and it's done very well.
Talking about the one that's at the point there?
Right.
Speed Q.
Oh, Speedy Q. Okay, yeah, that's a little further north. I thought you were talking about,
South.
In the south.
yeah, south, yeah, right, thank you.
But still on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
On the other side of the road, yeah.
Anything else from Planning Commission before we go to the public? All right, we will open this up for any comments from anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission regarding the special land use or a gas station. Yes, sir.
Jerry Haller, 8046 Pecos Drive, Grand Blanc. Well, Vince asked my question, but I would think, my comment is with a new bill like this, that the electric charging station should be a requirement. If they want to add it to the others, that's fine, but when you have a new build, I would think the township ought to be having a requirement for that at this point. That's my comment. Thank you.
Your comment? Anyone else would like to address the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman, can I address that comment?
As the Planning and Zoning Administrator?
Sir. That is not a requirement as of yet in our zoning ordinance, so we can't require that at this point. We can request it, but we can't require it.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dave Einhauser. I own the property directly across the street,
Excuse me, your
Autoport.
address? Your address, please?
5312
5312,
South Dort.
thank you.
And I've had it for 30 years, it's around 30 years. And the decline of that area I've seen in the last 30 years to what it once was, when the inn was going and the golf course and playland, it's sad. And I'd hate to see the township discourage any new building, any new development. That's really all I want to say. I mean, everybody knows here how sad that stretch of road is and the empty buildings. And so I encourage any new development. I would really love to see anything happen. I'm hoping the township will do something in the old playland in the time to come, but yes, I think we should encourage it rather than discourage it. And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the Planning Commission on this special land use request? Now, bring it back up to the Planning Commission. Any other comments, questions, discussions? Mr. Anderson?
Just have one quick comment before this goes to a vote. I just wanted to disclose, the company I worked for in the past, from, I believe, between 2014 to 2016, leased some property from this applicant. And although I only was employed by that company, I was the messenger between that company and Mr. Nugent's company. So that's a business relationship that's long gone. I no longer work for that company. It will in no way at all influence my vote.
You won't benefit from the
Nope.
decision one way or the other.
One way or the other, correct. So I'd still like to have the opportunity to vote if the board's okay with that. Vote should be disclosed.
Yeah, I don't see a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else who wanted to, any questions?
No.
It's a motion would be in order in regard to the special land use.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to request or recommend to the Board of Trustees that they approve site plan review
No.
22.
We haven't done we're gonna go to the special,
Oh,
the site plan next. We're treating the special land use separate. Is this at our level here? Yes. So we can make the decision on the special land use.
I'll
Go ahead.
just make my motion to recommend to the, well, we don't have to,
No,
we don't get the township. board. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the SPR number 1100 for 5313 South Dort Highway for Marathon Gas Station and Convenience Store.
It's for special land use.
Special land use
22-002.
I'll support.
Was there a question, Mr. Bush?
Well, yes, I was waiting for support, or I was going to support, but I would like to see that made conditional approval based on the submittal of a PIP plan.
Excellent.
And I'd also like the approval to read approval based on compatibility with the surrounding land uses and the two items that are on the back of Jeremy's letter. Should be read.
First,
That was part of my motion.
okay, very good. And then it was Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
That supported that motion? All right, you guys are both good with that? You clear? We're good with the motion?
Good.
Any other discussion on the motion for a special land use approval? If not, a vote is in order. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 8-0. All right. Next item is the site plan review, 1100.
Yes, so this is site plan review now, 1100, general commercial, a lot of the same information on this review as well. Go through it fairly quickly. Site's currently a vacant building, was a former GBI and Draft Street Bar and Grill. The parcels there is currently zoned general commercial. It's located on the east side of Dort Highway. Direction of adjacent land uses, the north is residential, vacant golf course. To the east, medium density and its apartments. To the south is general commercial, and to the west is general commercial. Applicant states that the site will be used for an automobile convenience gas station with 8 pumps and a 3,000 square foot building. The front yard requirements for developing, 30 foot is required. Since this is on a corner, so it has 2 front yards, so 30 and 185, and that's compliant. The rear yard is required for 20, provided is 93. Interior side yard required is 10, provided is 5 on the north side, but that is a legal non-conforming. This is an existing building. Maximum building height is required at 30 feet and provided is 16. Parking lot setbacks, front yard, 20 feet required, provided is 0 and 30 feet. Legal non-conforming. Rear parking setback required at 20, provided is 40. Adjacent to residential, required is 20, provided is 18 at the closest point, and that's also legal non-conforming. Elsewhere is required at 10, provided at 14 and 32 feet. Item 6, district requirements. Where adjoining a residential district, a solid fence or wall at 6 feet in height should be erected along the common lot line. There is an existing fence, but it would need to be repaired and or replaced and kept in good condition along the east side of the property abutting the apartments. The fence is also taller than 6 feet, so it needs to be that needs to be corrected and brought down to the 6 foot maximum height. Item 7, ordinance requires 1 parking space for every 250 square foot of leasable floor area, plus spaces required for auto service station activities. Auto gas stations are required 2 spaces per bay and 1 per employee. The applicant has provided 27 spaces and 2 barrier-free spaces where 27 and 2 are required. This standard has been met. Item number 8, exterior lighting. Planning Commission requires a submittal of a scaled photometric plan. At this time, no plan has been submitted and is required to review for the proposed site lighting. They understand that it is required and they can have that as contingent upon approval. Item 9 is the fence again. Can't be taller than 6 feet, must be replaced and or repaired. Landscaping, number 10, general commercial uses that abut single-family residential provide buffers within the required setbacks between the subject site and adjacent residential sites. So it's required 1 canopy tree and 4 shrubs, or 1 evergreen and 4 shrubs per 20 linear feet along the property line, rounded upward, and the standard has been met. Planning and Zoning Department would recommend a recommendation for preliminary approval with the following conditions. The replace the dumpster enclosure to the current zoning standards. Replace fence along east line, and it must be brought down to 6 foot from grade, and provide a photometric plan.
We've addressed all those issues on the site plan. On the plan submitted.
Please restate your name again.
Patrick Manor.
Thank you.
So we've had discussions, they're aware of all the conditions required, they've already got a copy of my review, and they've agreed that they will, before final approval is given, these items will need to be corrected.
So screening requirements between the residential and the GC property is the current fence, if it's repaired, complies?
So there is a fence there currently, it's in disrepair, and it's taller than 6 foot, so it needs to be brought down to the 6 foot maximum height, and it needs to be repaired and kept in good condition.
It's actually a 6-foot fence, but it's sitting, the posts are up higher, so there's space underneath. So we're just going to reconfigure it and make it comply.
Advantage to making the fences shorter?
In general commercial, 6 foot's the tallest it's allowed. In industrial, you can go to 8 feet.
Or in order to comply with the ordinance, okay.
And we're adding a whole bunch of landscaping back there, as you can see on the plan.
Any other questions from planning commission members? I didn't have a landscape plan, I don't think in my package.
There wasn't a separate landscape plan, it was done on the site plan. Sheet number S1.
So
What is the current fence made of?
It's a vinyl.
Vinyl?
Wait, vinyl. So the property that you're improving, the landscaping will actually be on the other side of the fence, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
The existing building, you're pretty much keeping as is that correct?
Yes, there's going to be some, if you look at the elevations, there's going to be some aesthetic improvements on the front. On the side. New entry canopy. Yeah, a new entry canopy.
Want to turn back 2 more pages.
You're putting new shingles on. So it's just basically kind of cleaning it up a little bit. It's not in bad shape right now. It doesn't really appear to be too bad, right?
I'm sorry.
It doesn't appear to be in disrepair itself. You're just doing some
Yeah.
aesthetic
We're going
improvements.
to do some engaged columns at the corners with stone, a different type of stone than the wainscoting stone. And just make it more physically attractive.
As chairman of the site plan review committee, I always have to find something to be corrected on any submittal, so you might want to check the spelling of dimensional on the dimensional shingles.
It's just, it's funny.
Anything else from planning commission members at this time? Mr. Bush?
Yes, thank you. My question, I guess, is for you, being site plan chairman. And it's been quite a while since I was on site plan. And as I look at this site plan, what used to be photometrics and details of signs, barrier-free signage, dumpster details, barrier-free details, tree details, turning radius on big trucks coming in and off the site. Can the trucks make it? I don't see that on the site. I guess just kind of an explanation for myself, is that something we've kind of laxed on over the years, or?
I think what we've done is, we've gone to a two-step process. I don't know if that was in effect when you were here. We do a preliminary site plan review and then a final. So, yeah, I think we'd like to see some of those additional details provided for the final site plan. Mr. Smith is.
Since this was kind of a existing site, they're bringing things up to today's standards, so we didn't feel that it was necessary for all the,
I guess if there's something that.
if you're requesting something, we can have them add on there.
No, I'm just more for my own knowledge to find out, I'm used to seeing a lot more information on the
Correct.
site plan
I
than
agree.
I'm seeing today.
And all the other site plans that you've seen in the last few months have had all those extra details, but those have all been.
The turning radius might be nice.
Yeah.
Well, so,
like to see that.
just so you know, as part of my submittals, it goes to our fire marshal, who looks at to make sure that the trucks can come in and out. This has already been, this is version 2 site plan. The first one, the entrance off the side road wasn't wide enough, and the applicants had to widen it to make sure that the fire trucks could get in there. So that has been addressed.
And there's also oodles of real estate there. I mean, we could have had a lot more parking, but what happens with a lot of the customers come there, might be landscape guys, and they're pulling a trailer, and they need to have a place to park, and there's, as you can see, there's tons of room. And we also moved the underground tanks out to the front, so the trucks delivering the fuel have plenty of room to swing around and go back out on Door Highway.
You're planning 8 pumps, is that correct? I mean, 4 physical
Yes,
locations with dispenser, I should say, on either side, right?
that's correct.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, one thing we've always talked about in the site plan that Paul remembers is dumpster doors. And we recommend on wheels,
Yes,
because over time it gets to be sagging and so forth.
yeah, and we just put it, there's just a note that says that we're gonna bring it up to your standards, to your current standards. From the existing.
Well, I don't know if that's a requirement,
It
but
is.
it is?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's actually,
pretty specific.
Okay. So I was disappointed in that the Kroger station on South Saginaw Street does not have wheels on the doors.
I'd have to verify that. I don't know if that's a,
This is as of 2 days ago.
right, but I don't know if that's a, do you know for sure if that's a?
I'm sure we talked about it in the site plan, but okay, thank you.
We'll verify that that's a, if that's a standard or not, and then,
We'll agree to doing that, whether it is or it isn't.
Well, I think in the long run, it's to your benefit.
Yes, it is.
Because you can see so many places where the doors are sagging and people don't want to close them
Yeah, I was
fully.
gonna say, they get in disrepair, then they don't get used, and the dumpster's visible.
Mr. Hoffman, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Mr. Bush's comment, as far as those, I mean, we referred to it before as the checklist, and if that could just be in here, that would save questions, at this time. So I hope they did, it's not doubting that the site plan review didn't do it, or that you haven't done it, but it's just, we don't see that it's been done, so I think it would just save time
sure.
on it in the future.
Sure.
See why they need new chairs. So, yeah, he's right.
For the audience benefit, Mr. Chairman is putting the notes down on document, which is our official, go ahead with the planner.
Here's what I've collected from the comments that I've heard, is it, ready?
The rollers are a requirement per the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Submit the proposed photometric site plan, that's no surprise to you. Repair and replace trash enclosure, as Mr. Smith has mentioned. Repair the existing fence. I heard for the final site plan, you'd like to see the standard site plan review checklist provided, just go through and check off that those items have been provided. And I heard a request for show some turning radius, just so you're comfortable that the semi trucks can make that. So that would be part of a request for the final site plan as well. Anything else?
Before we go to vote, just same thing as with the prior thing. I through a business of a former employer. I know Mr. Nucci, but I stand to gain nothing from this.
You're getting around.
Yeah. And 20 minutes. You know.
Something else, Mr. Bush?
No, if you're ready for a motion.
We're not required to have a public hearing for this, but I didn't know if there's anyone that wanted to make a comment based on what you might have seen. Anyone else that's here?
And this is just going to the board, right?
No, this would be for preliminary site plan approval with the conditions that have been noted, and then they would come back with the final site plan.
I'll make that motion for approval.
Support.
Motion was by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, support by Mr. Bush. All right, any other discussion? So the motion is to grant preliminary site plan approval with the conditions that we listed. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 8-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like a vote of the board, how they would like to see the final site plan approval. Would that be a recommendation to the site plan review committee or to the full planning commission?
My thought would be to the committee, if you want my input, just to the committee for review.
I would agree. I think the site plan committee can handle it.
I agree.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Thank you for bringing some positive development to that area, as our resident stated.
More breakfast pizza.
Okay.
No. Not at all.
I remember doing this in grade school.
That's the Jeremy.
Next item on our agenda is zoning case 674, the zoning amendments. This is by Mr. Wojciechowski, is that Mike?
That's correct. You got the right guy. So this is following up on our discussion from last month, and we went through quite a few zoning ordinance standards and kind of decided on, I believe there were 7 of them in today's for today's meeting that we had discussed. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review our memo from March 25th that if you hopefully got the color copy as well, you'll know in red is the new text that's added to each section. So what I would, if you'd like me, I can go through each section and just briefly summarize what the amendment will do so that the public is understanding of what the planning commission is doing, and that way
Please do.
questions can form around that. Awesome. So the first one, the first section that is proposed for amendment is 3.6R for mechanical equipment. And this would currently, this would permit mechanical equipment to go in any side or rear yard, and it would require adequate screening if it's going to be proposed in a front yard. And it adds some setback standards for that mechanical equipment, which would be things like air conditioning units, home generators, and that type of equipment associated with the building. Section 2, amend Section 4.17 for automobile sales used. This is in the general commercial district. Used automobile sales would be permitted as a special land use when the buildings associated with the use are located at least 500 feet away from any single-family residential district. So it was clarified to add that the buildings are what's being measured there and not necessarily the edge of the parking lot or just one of the parked cars. So it would be the building. The third amendment to Section 4.58, RV parking, would permit RVs to be parked of a Class A or Class C non-motorized recreational vehicle, would permit them to be parked in a front yard from April 1st through November 1st. What's that? All accessory vehicles?
Yeah, not just RVs.
48 hours.
Yeah, so the language that's in there, there's, so it would permit those vehicles which are currently prohibited and not allowed to be parked in front yards for more than, I believe it's 48 hours. This would allow them to be parked there between April 1st and November 1st without a time limit. The Fourth Amendment, Section 5.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Vandersky.
We talked about seasonal.
Correct. And that was determined, I believe, to be the season of RV season would be starting April 1st and run through the summer into the fall. And then by November 1st, the RV would have to be moved.
And seasonal being April through November?
Correct.
Camping season, boating season.
Pardon?
I'm assuming it's like camping season, boating, where people would have their boats out for the summer.
But what about an ATV?
So this,
Any, it's not just RVs, it's boats, trailers, any trailers,
I
any.
understand that, but
accessory-
I'm talking about an ATV, a four-wheel, all-terrain vehicle,
On a trailer or not on a trailer?
not on a trailer, that's parked outside. I mean, I have two John Deere Gators that I use year-round. You know, I'm able to put them in a garage or a barn, but if somebody has one,
the intent of this was to be less restrictive. So if there's no issue now, it wouldn't. We're not being more restrictive. We're saying we're not going to look at that between April and November.
okay.
So there's no.
What about December?
48 hours, is that right?
Well, yeah. So that's how it's currently regulated. There'd be no change. Yeah, there'd be no change from November 1st to April 1st. It'd be exactly the same regulation
You'd have to be.
as it is today. Or November 1st to April 1st during the winter.
48 hours is gone though.
To make sure I'm not misunderstanding,
proposed.
what we're
It
talking
says
about
right here,
is
48 hours.
storage in the front yard from April 1st to November 1st, and from November 1st through April 1st of the following year, that's still permitted, it's just behind the front line of the structure.
Correct. Side and rear yards.
There's also a limitation, isn't there, for 48 hours?
48 hours.
There's also a limitation in the current ordinance for the 48 hours.
From November.
That would remain.
That would remain from November till April 1st.
Correct.
So how does that solve the problem? I understand I thought that code enforcement had a problem with the 48-hour rule because how do you enforce it? How do you know when the 48 hours starts? And, you know, if someone gets a complaint, you know, can they just drive it out of the driveway and around the block and start a
Basically,
48-hour
Dolores,
period, you know?
if I move my boat from space to space,
Yeah,
every 48 hours, I have that right.
right, which is a problem,
That's the problem.
yeah. So we
So
have.
we're trying to eliminate that
That was
problem.
what we discussed.
We aren't eliminating it, though.
Well, it's not a problem if we approve this.
No, well,
Problem goes
it
away.
says
It still is there.
it allows the 48-hour rule from November through April, as I understand it.
That's how I read it as well.
Are we reading that correctly? That it's,
Yeah.
let me just read this here. Snowmobiles, boats exceeding 48 hours is prohibited in the front yard from November 1st to April
Yeah.
1st.
So if
Except
it's
for the
less
approved
than-
recreational vehicle storage.
Somebody's fancy Corvette is a recreational vehicle. Yeah, that's allowed?
No,
And the boats aren't. So
That's
you
not a
gotta,
recreational vehicle.
It specifies that it's a Class A, Class C, non-motorized recreational vehicle, snowmobile, or boat.
just saying.
So it allows it for less than 48-hour periods from November through April. But then how do you, that's the problem. How do you enforce that kind of a time limit?
Can I just put 2 cents in? Right now, we have the problem year-round, and we're trying to solve the problem for half the year because you can do it. So that is clearing it up a little bit for the problem. And then again, you don't have too many people that are trying to store something like that during the winter months because it's now in their way for plowing the driveway, getting it cleared, their cars in and out. So I don't think you have as many people parking something like that in the driveway during the winter months. So you're right, it's not solving the problem for the whole year, but it is definitely clearing it up for half of the year. And for the half of the year that the problems don't really exist, we're still going to have some issues.
Okay, but this is just a suggestion, but from November through April, rather than the 48-hour period, what about saying one weekend a month? The first weekend of the month, you could, you know, if you want to park it in your driveway to clean it out or whatever, you can. That would be a lot simpler thing to enforce.
I'm guessing either way that there's not going to be an issue unless someone complains. Is that correct?
You're just going to have a whole lot less complaints of the winter, I think, because it's going to happen a whole lot less.
Yeah, because right now, the complaints are, I'm sure, during the summer months primarily.
Correct.
I mean, isn't this, the other, I mean, this is kind of basically an aesthetics issue too, right? I mean, the only reason we have this is we don't want people permanently parking their giant RVs and that in their driveway for extended periods of time. Which raises another issue that I wanted to bring up, and that is the length of some of these RVs. I mean, we don't, currently, there's no limit on the size of the RV you could have in your driveway. And I know in our subdivision, there are a couple that have been there more than 48 hours that are huge. I mean, they're like these, you know, travel buses.
You gotta be real careful with regulating length, as long as it's not impeding clear line of sight or over a sidewalk, let's say. You have to worry about people's freedom using their own property for what it's intended for. I don't think we should ever regulate a length. Now, if it affects somebody pulling out of their driveway, your neighbor, we could regulate that. So if it hung over the sidewalk, we could regulate that. But to say because you don't want to see a 50-foot land yacht in somebody's driveway, you're really impeding on them as their freedom to use their property and their money as they see fit.
To go one even further, I think that we cannot tell people what they can and cannot do.
We do it.
And we're just walking a fine, we start telling people they can't have an RV, period, they're gonna take us to court.
Well, that's not what this is saying, though.
I mean, we can't.
I mean, we have all kinds of rules about what you
Well,
can
I
put in
understand
the
that,
front
but
yard
they
and
sell
side
them.
yard.
We can't tell them somebody can't buy something that's sold. How can we do that? How can we do that legally?
I don't think that's comparable. I mean, we're just saying, again, it's kind of an aesthetics issue, but when you look at our zoning ordinance, we have a lot of, you know, requirements that are aesthetics.
To provide
more than
uniformity
Anything else.
within the township, I understand that, that makes sense.
Mr.
And, well,
Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Smith, how many complaints do we generally get about parked RVs?
I wouldn't have those exact numbers because I'm not in control of the code enforcement division at this time.
Ballpark it?
You know, just complaints, maybe 50 to 100
A month?
a year.
A year? Okay.
But those we're still complaint driven. So if we were, I know we have more code enforcement officers. They hired another one over the fall. We're trying to be more proactive, but we're not a full proactive community yet.
Gotcha.
It may never be. We don't know to the extent of how this is going to be,
we
but
don't allow people to park.
they're going to having more people, more boots on the ground makes everything more uniform, and people can, you know, if this gets approved, they can go through the whole subdivision and treat everybody the same. So if they get one complaint, what we're trying to do now is make sure that through the whole subdivision in the area, everybody's treated the same and fairly.
Right. I know, I'm Mr. RV. I love RVs, right? Not necessarily motor homes and tow behind trailers, but like the other stuff. Every once in a while, I'll have to bring one back to the house, and I'll keep it there overnight when we get ready to leave to go out of town or whatever. I guess my concern in this is the person that doesn't want to see it. So to look at it from that side of it, are we essentially taking all the complaints that, the 100 a year that we get, are we essentially saying to those people, sorry, now what you haven't had to look at in the past, you now do have to look at because it's not convenient for us to send code enforcement out?
I mean, we're not saying you can't have it, we're just saying you can't park it,
Right,
in the
exactly,
driveway, but
exactly. You can't, yeah, you
Park
can't.
it on the
That's-
side.
And if that wasn't clear, that was the point I was making, is it's about parking, not having, I should say.
I think this whole issue came up because it was a code enforcement. They're like, we can't regulate the ordinance as it's currently written. This was an attempt to make an improvement. But as Mr. Bush said, you can take and move it over into the other side of your driveway every 2 days. And you're meeting the wording.
Yep.
If it's, well, now we're saying that's not an issue. You can leave it parked in that spot for April to November, correct?
Right.
So it's just a winter.
Yeah, an example, but like if I bring my boat home in the summer, to make it compliant, I move it over 5 feet and back 5 feet. Does that really change anything? But that makes me in compliance.
Yes, I know what you mean, yep.
But it's in the same spot.
Well, what are you
moved
doing in
over
the
5 feet.
wintertime? Are you?
In the wintertime, it's gone in
So
the
that's-
building somewhere.
So there shouldn't be the complaints. And
But I'm just
you won't-
saying,
won't have to move it every 2 weeks.
My particular example is just moving it 5 feet, so the neighbors still see my boat, 5 feet, not compliant, compliant. So I don't care one way or the other personally.
Well, we don't want to make it that
Right.
just
Doesn't affect me.
technical. Mr. Anderson?
In various positions on different boards and so forth for the last 6, maybe 7 years, I've discussed this. There is no correct answer to this whatsoever. I agree with Mr. Hoffman, this is a step in the right direction, and no matter what rule, no matter how tight you write the ordinance, somebody's gonna find a way around it anyways, Mr. Bush, so keep it as presented, move on, please.
Usually happens the next week. Somebody finds the loophole.
Sure,
And it always happens.
Like I said, I've talked to boat owners and RV owners, there's no right or wrong answer, you just gotta find what fits the best.
Mr. Yancho?
Well, I believe that you're still going to get the same number of complaints, but you will have to explain to the complaining person that they're abiding by the ordinance if it's April through November, and you won't have to send out code enforcement to try and handle that unmanageable situation.
Sure. We plan on doing a PR move with some sort of flyer, if this gets passed, putting it in water and sewer bills, tax bills, and things of that sort, putting it on the website, on our Facebook page to let everybody know, hey, from April 1st to November 1st, you can keep it in your driveway, but after that, it should be moved to the side yard.
Jeremy, you did state before when we talked about it, that covered nicely, they're not dilapidated.
Right, so code enforcement still has the authority, no matter what time of the year, if it's dilapidated, blighted, flat tires, unlicensed, things of that sort, broken windows, they can still go after that 365.
Mr. Bandersky?
Two comments. First one is, I think the number of complaints is probably a very minimum because people are fed up because nothing's happened in that respect. So the 50 to 100 is probably very low. My second comment is, what about cars or trucks? How many can somebody have in their driveway? Or do we have any regulation on that?
We do not.
So if we have 5 cars and trucks in the front, that's okay.
Yes.
That are licensed, in good
Licensed
condition,
and- right.
they can't be up on blocks. So
Right.
there are conditions of what type of car you can have in there, but, yeah. You have a
5 of them,
drivable,
okay.
yep.
But those aren't recreational vehicles, that's the difference.
He's asking a separate question.
Right.
People use their cars every day. Right.
All right.
Why don't,
Yeah.
We'll get there. Let's get through the rest of these items.
I've got one question for the board. Are we in agreement as presented? We're okay with that, still having that 48-hour?
I think,
Or would you like to see that 48-hour rule eliminated completely?
Mr. Anderson.
I used to be really, really anti-boat, anti-RV. I hated looking at them, but after talking to a couple owners, they've mentioned something to me that makes sense, especially with the bigger motorhomes and stuff, or the bigger boats. It takes them more than 48 hours to pack that sucker up and get ready for a camping trip. It takes them more than 48 hours to unpack it and clean it up when the trip is over. See, it's
You also
kind
got to remember, most boats over 25 feet aren't going to be in people's driveways. They're just too big to pull around. I mean, they're big.
I got a 38-foot boat next to me, but it's beautiful. He maintains it.
Does he trailer it all the time?
Yeah.
A good man here. It's a big boat.
But yeah, I may be the only one out here in this, but during the summer months, I'd be okay with eliminating that period as long as it's upkept and registered.
Right.
Because like I said, I know people that use them frequently, and it takes 3-4 days to load it up.
So as presented, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with it as presented, yeah.
What the consensus of the board, everybody else is okay as presented? Okay.
For now, we reserve the right to any changes.
Well, and that's the nice thing about these things is that we can, if, give me this year and let's see where it goes. If we get more complaints and we need to adjust this and amend it, we have all the power to do that. Or you guys have all the power to do that.
Let's move on to the next item.
Not yet.
We'll get to you in a second. What we're going to do is allow you to talk on any of these items that we've brought up.
Awesome. So the Fourth Amendment was to Section 5.2 regarding accessory structures. And this was adding some clarification for appearance standards to not allow temporary sheds. So appearance standards for detached accessory buildings and structures. No such building or structure shall be constructed or made of fabric, nylon, or canvas stretched and sustained by poles. So that's going to be added to the
Mr. Chairman.
Temporary structure section. The Fifth Amendment to 5.
Can we stop just for a second?
Absolutely.
We got it. Mr. Yoncher, you got a question?
It occurs to me that in the RE district, especially if you have 2 acres or 10 acres, or you have some sort of a farm or a horse or an animal, you may need some temporary storage, whether it's to cover your hay, to do other things that might be seasonal. And because of the size of those properties, maybe we're being a little bit too strict with those areas. Could we, so I'm asking if we could make an exception for RE.
So this is proposed for what zoning district? All?
I believe it's all districts. I believe it is all zoning districts, yes.
Any discussion on Mr. Yoncher's suggestion?
Which districts are you talking about?
Rural estate. 1 acre or larger.
Could that be, excuse me, could that be something that you'd take to the zoning board of appeals? As compared to giving it
You do that
more
anyway.
open?
Right, yeah, you could do that. If this was approved as presented, you could go to the zoning board of appeals for certain, if you had a hardship or practical difficulty where you needed that, yes, you could go to the ZBA for that.
Would that satisfy you, Mike?
Well, I think that's, if you needed it every year to cover your hay, for instance, then you'd have to pay the fee to go in front of the board, zone of boarding appeals
I guess my
Once a
argument
year?
to be for that is why wouldn't you build something permanent then that meets building code standards?
Expense, maybe?
I mean, those temporary sheds don't last long. They don't meet the weight, snow load of the building code, so.
So I guess if I read the ordinance correctly, it says sustained by poles. So if you covered your hay pile, it would not be affected with this, right?
I don't see that as. The way it reads, that's correct. Yeah, this was intended to, I think, regulate temporary sheds and those types of kind of pre-made structures. So yeah, that would not be covered by this under that.
Mr. Bush?
Maybe some clarification, and I think this was intended for residential uses. And Mr. Yacho, I believe, is bringing up farms. And I think I agree with Mr. Yacho, that in a farm scenario, somebody might have 50 to 100 acres and hay fields and horses and cows and whatever. And they could have a temporary structure for hay. I mean, you see them in every farm. But I think the hangup is it's in rural estate is where farms are allowed.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Yacho?
In many cases, it's becoming popular for farmers, for instance, to have a building that's covered with vinyl and very, not poles, but arches, for instance, usually. And you know, that they're going to some expense to get their stuff covered, and those are durable. You know, they're designed to last for 50 years. But it seems like this would exclude those too.
So does it, am I hearing that we'd like to not include the RE district in that?
I guess my question is if somebody came for a variance, we granted a variance, we could grant it until eternity. There's no saying that the ZBA couldn't grant it a one-time, one and final offer. They wouldn't have to come back every year to be approved for it.
Even though they took it down and put it back up. And
Well, right, exactly. We would grant that site the variance to have the temporary structure. They would have to prove the hardship and practical difficulty, and then we would grant that until eternity. They wouldn't have to take it down. Leave it there. That would be the condition of the variance that they would request.
Is the concern about,
Why not, I was gonna say, why not just exclude it in the RE's zoning classification for farming uses, something to that effect?
If it was specific to farming uses, I would agree to that, that's okay. But for the whole RE district, no, I don't believe should be allowed.
No, for farming uses within, because, I mean, there may be
Within
a lot of
RE, yes.
you know, structures that aren't farms, you know, not necessarily.
Looks like items 2 and 3 under rural estate would be the way we're talking about.
Yeah.
Farms and then storing, packaging, and processing of farm produce.
Does it disclose in there what a farm is or define what a farm is?
I didn't look in the definitions. There's two items, 2 and 3 under section B under rural estate.
So if I
And
got, I got 2 acres and a couple chickens in the backyard, I call myself a farm. I don't think that's really legit, and I'd like to see that worded differently. My comment on this is, I think, to what Mr. Ansel says, would probably be very few and far between, and I think a ZBA case would resolve the issue in those situations. I don't want to see it allowed universally across the board, because what happens with these structures, and I've seen in other places, especially, people put one up to store things in, and then they collect more things, and they collect more things, and then pretty soon you got junk all around those things. And I'd rather kind of see the zoning a little bit tight and give them an option for a zoning appeal.
I'm in agreement with that too.
I could live with that.
Okay.
I wouldn't have any problem granting a into eternity variance if it was requested to have that.
To infinity and beyond.
To infinity.
They could approve hardship.
Right, as long as a proof of hardship was done and or practical difficulty was shown, then I don't have any
Okay.
granting that.
Thank you, that's my opinion.
I have one more question, I guess. Would it be possible to amend that in an RE district, whether or not that would apply would be up to the administrator?
I was
rather
going
than
to kind of
through-
comment on that. I was trying to figure out the right wording. I wouldn't make a new ordinance standard that directs people to the ZBA. That's not what the ZBA is there for. It's for unique circumstances. So I think that we should work on language that regulates what we want. But saying, well, we'll just send them to the ZBA and grant endless variances, that's not what the ZBA is there for. So if it's a seasonal issue or a locational issue, I think we should work on the language to address that. Because from a planning sense, we would look at, if we were looking to amend the ordinance, we would go to the ZBA agenda and say, if there's constant variances coming to the ZBA, let's write an ordinance that addresses that. But we seem to be going the other way to write or an ordinance that sends people to the ZBA. So I'd like to see us say figure out what the issues are and flush those out. Is it a seasonal issue? Should we look at language similar to the RVs where these are not permitted at certain times of the year, or if they have to come for a permit or something? I just want to steer the conversation away from, we'll just make them get a variance if we have the power to craft the language right now.
That's a good point.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Smith?
I think as presented, I think it is sufficient in what we're trying to accomplish. And if somebody wanted to come, anything in the book, you can come for a variance for.
Exactly.
So as long as we don't say, we're not trying to push people to a variance, but just know
They can ask for it.
they can always ask for anything on a variance in the book. So as presented, I think it is sufficient in what we're trying to accomplish. If they want to come and they can prove that practical difficulty, like you're saying, then the ZBA could grant it. Not that we're going to grant everybody a variance, but if they can prove it, just like anything else in the book, they could be granted a variance. And if it becomes apparent that this is over and over and over and over again, then the book needs to be corrected. So at that time, I think we could change what's presented.
I'll go along with that.
Okay, next item.
Next item. The Fifth Amendment was to Section 5.3.5 regarding fences in industrial districts. The current ordinance requires the fence in the I-1 and I-2 districts, and this amendment would also include the R&D Research and Development District to be along with those, be required to have the same fencing standards.
Okay.
So if we're good with that one, the Sixth Amendment was for Section 5.194 for temporary signs. And this was to allow the temporary banners and signs to be allowed for a total of 56 days per calendar year.
That's double what it was before, right?
Correct, it was 28 before.
Okay.
And the freestanding temporary signs are reduced from 64 to 56. That way, all temporary signs are permitted and during the same window. The Section 7 Amendment to 6.
I'd like to stay at 6 for just a moment, please.
Yeah.
Under item C, the signs cannot be displayed for a continuous period greater than 14 days. Does that put us in the same trap that we had with the RVs, where they can take the sign down and put it back up 2 days later?
1 day later.
56 days a year.
That's all you get.
That's all you get.
But you can't do it for more than 14 days at a time.
Okay.
It could, but it would be, I guess it would be a similar situation where, yes, you could take it down for a day and put it back up, but you could only do that by the second month, but you'd be capped at that 56 days. So,
And they're also required to get a permit for each 14 days as well.
Okay. Under section F, where it says there's a gap of at least 30 days between the display of the same temporary sign on the same zoning lot, does that create a loophole where they could bring in a different temporary sign? If they could say the Coke is on sale this week and then the next,
it could, that's existing language. So if someone's abusing that or using that loophole now. That wasn't brought up as an issue when we talked about it, but that's how the language currently reads. So I don't know if that's a current issue. I don't know, Jeremy might be able to speak to that, but
We haven't had many issues with temporary signage. The purpose of us modifying this was just to get the same amount of days for each section.
Okay.
anything else on section 6? All right, no more questions. Section 7, amend section 6.3.6 for special land use amendments. And this would allow the Planning and Zoning Department to approve amendments and determine if an amendment was minor or major versus the building department doing that. And that was based on the previous positions and the staffing within the township, but that duty now falls to the Planning and Zoning Director. So we're just clarifying that language in here. So those are the 7 sections that are being proposed for discussion and amendment tonight.
We've had a couple of people that have been very patient here.
Have.
I'd like to get their input on. Well, let's open this up to the public. Anyone would like to address the planning commission regarding these items?
Thank you. My name's Frank Skinner. I live at 6087 Sugarloaf Drive in Grand Blanc Township. And my concern is with the 4.58, the RV topic that came up and that was discussed. The immediate issue, I think I'll answer or state my position on that quickly, and then I have kind of an overlying concern with that topic. The question of should it be relaxed, if you will, from summer months, April through November 1st, which actually I have to correct Mr. Bandersky. I think it wasn't the month of November, it ends on November 1st, so actually November would be back to the winter rules. I think that's a smart idea because it just makes sense. The only people that'll be upset with it are people that own snowmobiles. I'm not one of them, but they're actually included in the RV description, but their season is opposite of everybody else with boats and campers and whatnot. So if you can pass that, I think that's a smart move. I've lived in this home with my wife and our 2 children now for 14 years. We moved out of Fenton, out of a HOA community, which we hated because of the restrictions that were just beyond anything. We live in a blue-collar 1950 subdivision, Sun Valley. We have a school across the street from us. We love the school. We hate the streets. That's not your problem. Okay, my concern is I have improved my property since I've lived there. You can ask my neighbors. I clean it up. I'm not into clutter. I keep it nice. I'm always working on it. I get a pop-up camper. If you're not familiar, it's the smallest little camper a family can get. We're blue-collar, working-class people. We don't pay storage facilities to store campers. Most of them don't do that. What do they do when they have this rule in the wintertime now, if this passes? The loophole is they can all put it in their backyard on the side of their property, so the code reads, that's a joke. But there's no way I can put it on the side of my property. I could never get my lawnmower through or get through. I have a small property. It's a little ranch house. So the loophole is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, get it out of your front yard, but you better put it in your backyard. And I have testimony that, because I got a letter last month, and it was in front of my garage, the pop-up, and yes, it's wintertime. I don't know where else to put it. But I comply. I follow rules. I got the thing in the backyard. I called code enforcement to let them know I got the letter. By the way, very professional, treated me very nice on the phone. I have no complaints. I want to follow the rules. But I spend my time in the backyard. I barbecue in the backyard. Who barbecues in their front yard? If you have a swimming pool, do you swim in the front yard or the backyard? The backyard. Do you have your birthday parties in the front or the back? The backyard. Where are the backyard weddings held? In the backyard. All the junk is in the backyard now. And I have it on one side of my house. I have absolute junk to look at. I think the loophole is that we're driving people to put their things in the backyard. And I'm all about the freedom that came up earlier. Mr. Bush, I think you mentioned that. Who has the right to tell people what they can own and not own? I get ordinances, I'm all for it. But I want to sit in my backyard, not look at people's stuff. If the township is unhappy with it in the front yard, which I know why you're doing it, it's common. We don't want all the stuff in the front yard. Mr. Anderson said he didn't used to like to look at boats and campers, and I respect that. I don't want to look at it all in the backyard when I sit on my deck and barbecue. And that's the trouble I'm facing now. So I think, short-term, this is probably the right move to do. Free it up in the summer, deal with your snowmobile and ATV folks that are not going to be happy. But it's a step in the right direction. But overall, aesthetically, I don't think it's right to cure the front yard and punish the people that want to enjoy their backyard. My backyard is clean, and it's been clean since the day I moved in. Can't say that for everybody. But I have a camper now in my backyard, as of tonight, or as of a couple weeks ago. Tonight it sits there. Maybe I can move it to the front again. But what about the aesthetics? I know 3 minutes is probably coming up, I get that. What about the aesthetics, though? When do we decide what is junk and what is not junk? And when do we respect the liberty of people to have the freedom to own what they believe is in good repair? Because I've got some good examples. Thank you for your time.
For your comments, appreciate it.
Jerry Haller again, 8046 Pagels Drive in Grand Blanc. On the RV parking, I'm president of the Clover Ridge South Condo Association. Within our bylaws, we allow 48 hours. I don't plan to change that. I'm assuming that my bylaws will be above what the town, if your township makes a change, my bylaws still say. Secondly, just a comment or a question on the temporary sheds. How would that affect a place like Miller's Greenhouse out here when he puts it up? Are you telling him he can't do that? Or does that fall within that? You know, he put something up for his summer planting and stuff. That's a question.
That'd be commercial, so that, in my opinion, the accessory structures covered.
You said this was all zoning districts, didn't you?
I mean, if it was already approved use as commercial greenhouse, they're allowed to do those things. So
Okay.
it's different.
I just thought of that. And the other one on the temporary signs, and the 14-day issue, I know when the Ally Challenge comes, there's usually a temporary sign up there for more than 14 days. Is that going to be an issue?
They usually come in and get a permit.
They get a permit, and then after the 14 days, the code enforcement is in charge of taking those or removing them and/or the company removing them. So now we have more boots on the ground.
With advertising more than 2 weeks in advance?
Not typically. It's not a huge ordeal, but they get taken fairly quickly afterwards. You know, it's ends on Sunday, and usually by Monday or Tuesday after the event, our code enforcement people are out there cleaning up the roads.
Yeah. I know sometimes I see, Ally Challenge coming and they have a sign, but anyway, that was just a comment. That's it. Thank you.
Comments? Anyone else wants to address the planning commission? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Eder, 7212 Porter Road. Yes, I'd like to talk about this RV parking. One thing you have a consensus on your idea what you're going to do here. I wish we could get the public's input before you had a consensus. That's just my opinion. Thank you for listening to that. My opinion on RV parking is I'm totally opposed to it, okay? I've lived here 30 years. And I have neighbors with a 32-foot trailer and another one with probably a 20-foot trailer, and I really don't feel like looking out in my front yard and looking at them. That's my opinion. I used to own a boat, large boat. I couldn't park it in my driveway, okay, because the ordinance said I couldn't. I bought a piece of property so I could park it behind my house, so I didn't interfere with my neighbors. So, that's what I did. That's me, okay? And so I'm opposed to changing the curb appeal of our township, our community, from greenscape to parking lots. That's just how I feel about it, I really do. When you build a piece of property, I've known this happen in a township, residential, not residential, but commercial, and I know residential in some communities, you have to actually put money up front with the city or township to say, I'm going to put my landscaping in and beautify the front of my property, and then I'll get my money back when I do it. We're trying to change that here, and I am opposed to that. That being said, And I don't know why we're here, because a year ago, the township decided, the board decided to hire 2 more code enforcement officers to solve this problem. We have more employees to deal with this now. Now we're going to change the ordinance and relax it. What have we got the code enforcement people for? That's not your problem. But I will be the township board to say something about that. So I've read ordinance number 458. And that being said, my opinion on it, but I've read that ordinance, and I think it's very unclear. I think the amendments to it are unclear. No offense. So I'd like to bring up some ideas and for your consideration in this, okay? And I think it needs to be defined what really an RV is. And some may have a different opinion on what they are, okay? A recreational vehicle, that's RV. Is Bigfoot, a dune buggy, a go-kart, a dirt bike? Those are recreational vehicles. Do we park them in our front yard? I don't know. So, I mean, these are things you really got to look at. And plan for the loopholes, because you will be challenged. You will be challenged. So, how many of these can we have in our front yard? You know, this is just my input. I don't want any of them in my front yards, okay? That's my opinion. Is it 1, 2, 3, 5, 10? What's the number? I drove here today and I seen five vehicles, a trailer, what do you call it? A race car for demolition in a driveway, a pickup truck to tow it, and then another vehicle in the driveway that was recreational. There was no cars there. The other side of the house had a trailer with a pickup truck box on it, and the front yard's all dirt. So we can't take care of that. We may as well even write an ordinance. So can we park these things, anyhow, it's parking. Do we park them on concrete, or can they be parked on the lawn? I've seen them parked on the lawns, and it's dirt, it's mud. My wife has made a lot of code enforcement complaints over the last 12 years. And none of them seem to be addressed. That's why I thought we were getting more code enforcement officers and we'd solve that problem. So, can we park them diagonally across the front yard? Is this part of our ordinance? Because I've seen that happen too. You got to be clear on what we can do in the front yard. It's got to be defined because you will be challenged. Does a boat or snowmobile have to be on a trailer, or can it be just sitting on the lawn? Really, you can put a boat in the backyard. You don't have to have a trailer for it. Well, I did from the backyard. So I'm just trying to help here if you do this. I don't want it done, but how far from the lot line, how far from the home, how far from the sidewalk, the side? You know, that all has to be considered. Consider the health and welfare of the people there. Consider the fire department when they show up to a residential property. Can they get around and maneuver to do their job? Are we putting a police thing in jeopardy by having to negotiate all these things in the front yard? You're supposed to be able to go in our subdivisions and have curb appeal. Are we going to create it or not? Like I say, I'm opposed to it, but that being said, I do have on here what this one gentleman talked about, the HOA. The people that don't have HOAs count on you. We count on you. I'm not in an HOA. So the newer part of this subdivision, this township, with site condos and HOAs, will have no problems. And so anyhow, and this is true when you build. I already brought this up. When you build, you have to put in your, so appeal. I know I'm running into time here. Class A and Class C vehicles, that's a chassis. We can put anything on we want and call it recreation. When you call recreation, you call recreation. I may not call that recreation. So it's a can of worms we're opening up here, and I hope we're very careful about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think this particular item we know has been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years. It's one near and dear to most people's hearts. Mr. Wojciechowski, was there anything that you wanted? Somebody else. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Is there someone else that wanted to? Yeah, I got so deep into it here that.
2086 East Cook.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that just in the mic?
Ted Hockey, 2086 East Cook. And I'd like to come out in support of this change. We need to start someplace. I've seen very tastefully stored units in front of houses. I have a neighbor that has a snowmobile trailer and really no access to his backyard. I sympathize with the guy because a few years back, he excavated to the side so he could park. And it would be another major excavation for him to achieve access to his backyard. I've got a work trailer and a neighbor next door. I like where he parks it just to the side because it's covered by trees. Bottom line is, people have made efforts. It was one consideration for me where I could park, and this fall I did improve my parking situation, so it was number one, level, number two, on crushed concrete. And I think people make an effort. Some people have very large capacity that they tow around with very large vehicles. Yeah, that's their choice. I'm happy for them. I've got the size that makes me happy, and fortunately it fits. So I'd just like to come out in support of that. I think it's a start. And again, if it doesn't work out, I know we talked about this, thank you for your time. You know, there's changes. And I also sympathize with people that have to look at things that are kind of unsightly, because I have seen that also. And I think that falls into code enforcement. And thank you very much for your time. I got to go pick my wife up.
Don't be late for that.
Anyone else that would like to address the planning commission? All right, we'll close the public comment, bring it back up to the planning commission. Any comments regarding clarity or Mr. Anderson?
I have one that kind of occurred to me during some of the conversation. As far as the motorhomes, RVs, and boats and stuff go for in the front yard for some months, 48 hours, could we, or would it be unrealistic to limit that to one vehicle? Like, you can't have a boat and a motorhome parked in your front yard for the same 48 hours? I don't.
It's a slippery slope.
Is it? Okay. Yep. I thought, and to some of the comments people made is, I mean, I have a utility trailer I use in the fall to haul brush and stuff like that. It's parked in my backyard. I hate sitting on my patio looking at it, but that's what the code allows, and that's what I have to do. I would also hate to see it in my driveway all summer long as well, but so be it. I think the present rule works pretty well, and this just improves the pen a little bit.
I've got a question based on some of the comments that I heard here. Can you park your RV on your front lawn, or does it have to be on our ordinance does clarify what it needs to be parked.
It probably could be strengthened up because the current language for single-family detached homes, let me pull that back up. Where did that go? Parking for single-family residential uses, single-family detached units on individual lots, off-street parking spaces shall consist of a parking strip, driveway, garage, or combination thereof, and shall be located on the premises they are intended to serve. So that, I read that as it needs to be parked in the driveway or the garage. However, the parking strip is not defined, and that may be where you could get a little bit, but I believe the intent of that, if I were, playing devil, would not be that your lawn is a strip. It would be like a gravel or an area designed for that.
Improved surface.
So absolutely. So as we're in this ordinance, if we feel like that's a loophole there, that a parking strip, we can take that out, or we could do a little research to see if that pops up anywhere else in the ordinance. But the intent is that single-family detached units on their own lots, parking is done on the driveway or in the garage. And that's in the ordinance.
Or an improved surface next to the garage.
It just says parking strips, so
If somebody were to come in and pour a load of gravel next to their driveway, or next to their garage, they could park these RVs there as well.
Can we go forward and clarify that?
Absolutely.
Just need to be little strips. Wide as a tire, 2 of them.
Mhm.
I mean, there's, like you said, you
So-
can get around anything.
We could add a definition for parking strip so that it's known that so that if somebody wants to park it somewhere on the front or side and they just want to do 2 wheel paths, or you could say, just remove parking strip from that sentence and say, off-street shall be a driveway or a garage.
You really don't, in my opinion, you don't need a parking strip next to your house or in your backyard.
No.
Who's got parking lots?
Well, what I'm thinking about here is, again, to the side yard, behind the front line of the house, to the side yard, you probably don't. But I have seen it, and I know of one in my neighborhood from 2 years ago where the guy had his boat on the front lawn on the grass.
Right, and that would be not allowed.
Right.
Not be allowed.
Right.
What about living or staying in an RV in the driveway?
The very last sentence addresses that.
Oh, shoot.
Shall not be occupied.
Yep.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
And that's currently already in the.
Okay. All right. So I can't Airbnb mine.
Not if it's in the front yard.
Please.
Not if it's in. So you can't do it in the
Please,
backyard?
no.
I saw the wheels turning there, Jay.
And parking on the grass. Park on the grass and have a B&B.
Yeah. I can put the snowmobiles in the front yard and then, clear out the trailer.
Were there any other questions on that one?
Yes. Maybe like to do a little research on improved surface, which I think is in there somewhere because that terminology comes from my
The
mind.
parking strip is the,
I like improved surface better,
Okay.
I think. But
yeah.
I'll leave that up to you guys to research and determine the best.
Were you looking
Verbiage.
for any action tonight?
Say that again?
Were you looking for any action this evening?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Yancho?
Can I back up, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For used automobile sales, do we have any requirements that limit storage of non-running or not-for-sale vehicles in that? And I was looking at the repair ordinance, and I actually wondered if we couldn't have the used automobile standards be attached to or require them to meet the same standards as the vehicle repair ordinance.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find this section.
This one, right? Only one.
So you're saying that the automobile repair in 4.16 is the section you're talking about?
Yes.
And you want some of those standards carried over to the automobile sales for used car dealerships?
It looks to me, reading 4.16, that 4.17 could be written that, and you also have to comply with 4.16. I think we do that other places in the ordinance.
Scanning it, yeah, I don't see. I guess it's kind of, there may be a lot more to that than just saying, yeah, I mean, yes, you could do that, but I don't know what the implications are without further research of that.
Mr. Chairman? I have a question.
Mr. Smith?
If somebody came to me and they wanted to do automobile sales, that would be all they'd be approved for. If they wanted to go further and have sales in repairs as well, they'd have to apply for the site plan for both pieces or the special land use for both sections, correct?
Say that one more time?
So if somebody came in and just wanted to do straight sales,
Yeah.
they would only be regulated against 4.17, sales only.
Correct.
And then if they came in and wanted to do repairs on top of that with the sales, they'd have to also comply with 417 and 416 and be approved for both.
Yes, but I think there's just, I think what Mr. Yancho was getting at was, is there a possibility that somebody has a used car dealership and is pushing that beyond the limits of, and it's starting to spill over, maybe there's, so are there any particular site, like I was just kind of scanning through 4.16, and I think what you're getting at was the storage of wrecked, partially dismantled, or other vehicle, or just all the standards, or was there any?
Well, that's the particular one.
So I think that could absolutely be, to Jeremy's point, yes, if they're doing that, then that would be a violation of their site plan.
Right.
Because they're conducting a use that's not permitted.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt to add that language in there. We could add it at the end of the sentence that used automobile sales under 4.172 there. And we could just take the language from 7, storage of wrecked, partially dismantled, or other derelict vehicles, or overnight parking of any vehicle except a tow truck is prohibited beyond 1 day. And craft that language to
Something similar to that.
strengthen that. Is that something the rest of the planning commission?
You've got a comment, Jim?
I'd like to add that to both then, because they can do, new sales can also repair new cars, and we don't want the same thing in both. If we're gonna add one, we might as well add it to both. I'm not opposed to the language. I guess I'd just rather, I'd have it add for both, or you have to apply for both sections if you wanna do both uses on your property.
Any thoughts from anyone else?
I think it's strong the way it is with the, you're not complying to your use that you applied for without having to, now you're, in my opinion, it's mudding the waters a little bit. Oh, I wasn't allowed to do it at all, but now I'm allowed to do it for 1 day. Yeah, that's cool. So you're almost opening the door for a problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to maybe find the middle ground there, we could say 7 and just say is prohibited. And just not even say beyond 1, just say it's prohibited. So there's ways to strengthen that if the planning commission feels this is maybe opening up an opportunity. But from my understanding, this hasn't been an issue with used car sales districts or uses. So sometimes if it's not broken, maybe don't fix it, kind of.
Correct.
Mr. Bandersky?
If our action is to approve these tonight, is that what I
Recommend to the township board.
recommend? But with all the discussion that's gone on relative to the storage of vehicles, does that require more discussion or more clarification before we send it to the township board? Because I would imagine the township board members are going to have the same kinds of questions and issues that we brought up. And so, my personal opinion, it's not that solid yet.
Review some, especially the automotive one, for one more time before we send it to the board, saying so they can sit down and, otherwise they would sit down and repeat the same discussions we're having.
Yes.
If we're gonna do that, then I think we need to do that tonight and get it done. Because otherwise, we're gonna spin our wheels, we're gonna come back next month and talk about the same stuff we just talked about today. So we need to do that tonight.
Well, I'm okay with that.
April's coming.
It's already been 2 months, so we need to get this done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the good news that I've heard of the things that I've heard tonight, I think we have talked about before, and I think we've talked about it in other public comments. I think we've heard from the public through complaints. I think the township board has heard about what they want us to do. I think we've had a lot of public comment about this. The good news is for those who, maybe this is your first night here or talking about this, these things, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean here, but the things that were brought up tonight, I don't think are anything new that we haven't heard before. I'm glad that they're coming up again to bolster what we've heard in the past also. But there's a lot of things that were brought up tonight where, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Yes, we have. And I think that's how this language came about in the first place. And they looked at the percentages of issues and how can we get some of the issues down without not free and saying, okay, everybody can do whatever they want. At the same time, we have your liberties and you own your property. I mean, there's a fine line between those type of things. So to me, I think this has been gone over and over and over for years, actually, not just even days or weeks or months.
This is not enacting an ordinance. This is a
Right.
recommendation to the
Right.
township board based on discussions that we've had.
For years.
We think we're making on most of these items
An improvement.
improvement. It seems like the RV one has always no matter what you decide to put down, it's gonna be a discussion item. Let the township members, how happy they are.
Punt. Said I'm for punting.
Punt to the township board?
Yeah.
You're happy with what you're seeing here?
I think it's a vast improvement. It is.
I'm opposed to the.
We can always
I
change
don't.
it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no. I think, you're right. I don't know that, we're going to be able to reach a consensus, or even that the Board of Trustees are going to be able to reach a consensus. I mean, there's just a lot of arguments on both sides. But I just, like I said before, I don't think it solves the problem of the 48-hour rule, which is not enforceable. And I think it's too generous. I mean, it's saying, I think even April to November is too generous. I would say May through September. But even in that period, I don't know that we should allow people to just, have their RVs parked in the driveway continuously through that period. If we wanted to try some rule that might be easier to enforce during that time, you could say on weekends, Friday through Saturday during those periods of time. And then during the winter, maybe one weekend. That would seem to me to be a simple thing to enforce, a simpler thing to enforce. It wouldn't allow continuous parking of these, and some of them are, it is sort of aesthetics. I mean, there's no way around it, but there's a lot of, other requirements in the zoning ordinance that are kind of dealing with aesthetics more than anything else.
Mr. Smith, can we send this up to the township board with some sort of annotation that there was considerable discussion regarding the RV section and,
I think they could figure that out.
I mean,
we feel that it may be an improvement, but, I don't know.
well, and like we talked about before last month, is that this is a step in the right direction. And eventually, my plan is to have this pulled out of the zoning ordinance and be with the township board solely as its own general ordinance, not a zoning ordinance. So this is to push it forward to alleviate the stress on my code enforcement people, so that way they can focus on blight and grass and junk cars and other things that are more important for aesthetics. If we're worried about aesthetics, that's what they're going to be focusing on. That's why they hired more in code enforcement, not to deal with RVs. This is something they're chasing their tail on, and this is why we've come to the language we have today.
Can we make some kind of comment?
You can make comments and I can relay whatever you'd like, but you have to make a vote to recommend today.
All right.
Yeah, I can.
He's got a comment.
Yeah, I take a little exception to what you just said, Jeremy, because we're going to make it easier for code enforcement, but more difficult for the residents.
How?
How?
Yeah.
Because they have problems either way. Either way we go, there's going to be problems, in my opinion. So that's why I said earlier, if we want to spend here till 10 o'clock, that's our legal time, we should be clear as a commission as to what it ought to be. And I don't think we're there yet.
I think, Vince, one of the things that I look at, and the code people are going to have alleviation, the problems from them, because as my right to own a boat, I have a boat. So if we don't change anything, code enforcement guys are going to come to my house every 2 days, because I'm going to hook my boat up and I'm going to move it every 2 days. And they can't do anything about it. And every person like me is going to move their boat every 2 days, and all the code enforcements are going to come to my house and can't do anything. That's the issue. And that's my right. And that's everybody's right in this town. So is it perfect? No, I don't think it's perfect either.
Well, can we?
But that's the reality.
Can we say this is better for the residents?
I don't know that. But I'm just saying.
For the
that
residents that don't have to go out and move their car every 48 hours,
That
it's going to be
doesn't
better.
bother
Well, it's going to be better for them.
That's what I was going to say is, it's like I said before, there's no around, because for the residents who have a camper that they're getting ready to take up to Traverse City next week, they need to park in their driveway for 72 hours to get it loaded up. There's, like I said, we have to improve it, but we're not going to solve it.
Exactly.
I guess I can't think of another way to say it.
This can always be amended, but you have to give it time to work the kinks out. And if there are kinks, we can fix the kinks. Nothing's gonna be 100% perfect. Anything in this book is 100% perfect, no matter what ordinance you look at. You could pick it apart left and right.
That's why we have the
You could poke
ZBA.
holes in it, I don't wanna say pick it apart, but we could what if everything to death. We could be here for another 7 months and we still wouldn't make a decision. We gotta move forward some way, somehow, to either leave it the way it is or modify it to see if it'll work. This has been, from my understanding, beaten to death, and we need to move things
Okay.
in one direction or the other.
I will go with the consensus of my peers.
Good.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Yancho.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the board of director, or the trustees, board of trustees, that they approve this as written.
Is there support for that?
I'll support.
We have a motion by Mr. Yancho, support by Mr. Anderson. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would make just a comment about, this goes to the board when they have this discussion. Will you be there, Jeremy?
Yes, sir.
Because our board representative is not here tonight, so, it's gonna be the planner supporting this as compared to a planning commissioner supporting this, so.
We trust him.
If any of you would like to come to the board meeting for public comment, you could also do so as well.
What's the date on that?
I believe that'll be the 19th of this month. It's not gonna be next week, I don't believe. Usually it's,
19th.
I believe it's the 19th.
In the driveway?
Yeah.
It'll be April.
They had a meeting on the 5th.
Yep, so if they had a meeting on the 5th, then it will be the 19th. Yes.
Yeah, the 19th agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion. Support. Support.
Mr. Chairman, can we do a roll call vote on this one?
Exactly what I was just gonna do.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna start with Mr. Yancho.
Yes.
Ms. Coulter?
I'm voting no, and I just want it to be recorded that the no is based on section 3, dealing with the RV parking. That's the section I disagree with.
Mr. Anderson?
Say yes.
Mr. Bandersky?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
I'm gonna say no, based on section 3.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
And Mr. Gillen votes yes, so motion passes 6-2. Thanks for all the good discussion. We have one other thing we gotta go back to old business now, right?
Oh, yeah, we had that one item we moved, didn't we?
Yeah, so in light of this discussion, we're going to keep it going because it's not 10 o'clock yet. No, so we just wanted to kind of keep as we know, these, have had some of these discussions and wanted to just keep the momentum rolling now that we're all thinking about the zoning ordinance, hopefully looking at it. If anyone had a chance to read over our memo that had all of this information, you will have noticed on the bottom of page 1 that we requested a little bit of research homework from the Planning Commission to help guide our research.
Excuse me, is that your March 25th memo?
That's correct. All good. That's I'm a very lenient teacher, so it's.
I missed it.
So essentially, we want to kind of keep. We included the list from our last discussion. That's pages 6 and 7 of the memo. But the item we wanted to talk about. See, there's still some flipping. On the front page. Yeah. Under additional discussion on page 1 of the memo. We all there?
Page 1.
Additional discussion page.
Yeah, I'm just seeing some
you started, I thought you referenced another page.
Yeah, no, so I was kind of going back and forth. I was saying this additional discussion was pulled from the last meeting, and we wanted to kind of see if anyone had a chance to review there was some discussion in the last meeting about the uses in the districts, and this is kind of a good exercise to go through every couple of years to make sure that new businesses that are coming online that might not have been anticipated when the ordinance was adopted, that those are being regulated properly, and that if there's businesses that are maybe nuisances or things that we don't want, that we can figure out that we don't want those in certain districts. So we asked everyone to take a look at the residential districts in your ordinance and look at review the list of permitted uses, and to see if there was anything that anyone thought was missing or should not be included in that list.
Sir.
I have a suggestion for R1, R2, R3, and possibly R4, removing farms from those, farming operations from those districts. No, chickens included.
R4 is a.
R4 has storing, package, and processing of farm produce, so I don't know if that really falls under the same.
Those are the tiny lots that we got.
That's why I was questioning that as well. Why would we have farming operations on tiny lots like that? I don't have a problem with trees or sod farms or greenhouses or orchards, even though I don't think that's not gonna work, but you could always have a larger lot where that wouldn't be as detrimental, but where farming on a residential subdivision lot that's only 60 foot wide, that's a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How big of a vegetable garden can I have and it not be considered a farm?
As long as you're not selling it and you're doing it for personal consumption, in my opinion, that's personal consumption, not a farm and selling.
So there's the key between whether you're farming or not, is whether you're selling it or not, because then your chickens are back in if you don't sell your eggs.
I eat my eggs.
That's regulated, and farming and having livestock is two different things, in my opinion.
But if I can do my whole lawn as long as I don't sell it. I can give it away, I can eat it myself, but I can't sell it.
Garden?
Can we word it to where it differentiates between an agricultural use such as a garden or so forth, is even if we can't emphasize, versus live animals? Can that be done? Because, for example, I've got half-acre lots in my neighborhood, and I got a guy with 10 chickens.
So
Separate rules, there's a separate section of the zoning ordinance for animals, right? For farm animals?
there maybe this got really deep really quick, so I was looking at the definition for farm,
Yeah.
and it's good, so it gives me homework, but what was that?
No, you're good, keep going.
No, I just wanted to say that I think that if this is a discussion you'd like to have, I could be happy to put together some more research, but the definition of farm does kind of get into the types of uses and what it shall not include, the raising of fur-bearing animals, commercial dog kennels, so it does kind of get into those uses, but, so there is some distinguishment between those, but.
Poultry in there.
Yeah.
Livestock in general.
So, yeah.
That includes ducks, unfortunately, horses, goats. I mean, all that could be cows, pigs.
Good.
You don't want livestock in single-family residential, in my opinion. That is a RE.
I totally agree with you on that, and that's what I'm seeing. I know of 2 lots, but anyway. Done.
What was that?
He said his goat was a lawnmower.
Kinda.
Still livestock.
Mr. Chairman?
So a farm is focused on the commercial production, is the term that's used in the definition, so I don't think that.
Farm commercial.
Okay.
The right to farm law mentions that you have to, in order to qualify as a farm, you must sell some produce, and I think it's got $1,000 a year Minimum.
That was going to be my next comment, was there's a whole nother layer of right to farm that,
Little stands out in
that
front of people's homes.
So tonight's discussion was to exactly have this, to see the uses in the districts that you might be wanting us to look at, so that we can provide you with some information to see how that might be regulated. So without going down that rabbit hole, I'll note that the farming operations in residential districts, other than RE, will be something that we can put together. And what we would like to do, though, is pull together kind of all the sections in the ordinance that address that, to get the whole picture before we start just like saying, that's strike, just see what that means. So I appreciate the comment, and you've given me some direction, but I would say if there's any other uses, but this is exactly the feedback we're looking for.
Can we include the livestock discussion as well?
Yeah, I think that's
Included in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, what you were looking for?
Yeah, did anyone get a chance to review that, or are we gonna come back next?
Didn't read that section.
That's all good. That's all good. So I didn't. So I just kind of wanted to keep facilitating that discussion. We don't need to obviously. This is probably going to be enough for another memo and another meeting. So that we'll continue with that. But correct, yeah, all the residential, other than single-family residential, yep. And so I would encourage everyone to look at that portion of the memo and look at the ordinance to continue that, as well as as I mentioned, pages 6 and 7 of our memo, the last two, do have the other items that we kind of have on our list. And I know that for next meeting, did you not get the?
I don't have any 6s and 7s.
I don't have a.
I've got lots of 2s and 3s.
I'm sorry, we sent a 7-page memo, and apparently you didn't get the information that we sent.
We'll resend it out to you.
Okay.
So.
I apologize. It's a summary list of everything that we talked about last time, how I grouped them into what we were calling minor amendments, minor and major. So we accomplished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the minor ones. And the one that I owe you some more information on, I didn't want to overwhelm everybody tonight, is the attached single-family dwelling offsets. We had talked about maybe varying from that 50% and going a little bit less. So we're going to give you some more information for the next meeting to look at that shows you what a 25% or a 10% sort of
As long
setback.
as we don't become Davison, we're okay.
So we're gonna
Anything like that.
we're gonna be patient and make sure we're doing it right. So we're gonna set you up for that discussion to hopefully keep that going. As far as, so we'll look at the housing and the farming uses in the single-family districts, and that way we'll kind of keep our focus on the single-family districts.
And then if you guys do your homework and you find something in these residential that you don't see fit or you want to have added, email me and I'll pass it along to Matt and Jill for whenever they bring that up at the next, well, probably won't be the next meeting. It'll probably be
Yeah, but it'll be the June meeting, yeah, because Jill and I will both be out of town for the next month's May meeting. We're at the National Planning Conference.
Okay. Mr. Bandersky?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about all residential districts, can you provide us with those listings?
It's online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Is there any other comments on those couple items? So, yep, like I said, we're gonna focus on the farming uses and the housing. We'll set up a memo. Hopefully you can continue that discussion, keep it fresh in your minds, and we'll be back for the June meeting to hopefully get some action on those.
All right, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
So, I believe next item on our agenda is committee reports.
Yes.
So we don't have township board here, so we'll skip that piece. Jeremy, anything else for planning and zoning?
it's getting busy. We will have a couple items on the May agenda. One will be more text amendments. I don't think we're gonna have a public hearing then for anything else, more discussion. And then I have expanding a future site plan for, possibly there's a crematorium, vault on Holly Road, South Holly Road, almost to the township line. They're looking to expand their business, so that, right, so they're looking to expand, so that should be on May's agenda as well.
Okay, I have a question for Jeremy. What's happening with that parcel on Grand Blanc Road right near Fenton Road that was pretty much clear cut?
They were supposed to come to the site plan review committee tonight. We found out there was some sewer capacity issues, so they were pulled from the agenda. We're in the process of figuring that process out and where they need to go in the future, but we're hoping to have that information buttoned up by either tomorrow or Monday, and then possibly having a site plan review committee meeting on Wednesday, I believe is what Maria and I have discussed with you gentlemen, to get them to go forward for at least for preliminary, and then see where it goes from there. But there's sewer capacity issue, and we're trying to work through that. Attached condos.
Is that it for you?
That's it.
Mr. Johnson, zoning board of appeals?
ZBA, we had quite a short meeting, which was nice.
7 minutes.
It was 7 minutes.
New record.
New record.
That makes up for it.
Yeah, this, and the last one, yeah. And then we finished up the vinyl sash stuff, so.
No, as of right now, we have no April ZBA. Canceled, no agenda items.
Site plan, we haven't seen any site plans in the last month.
No, but the way things are going now, site plan review committee is gonna get real busy real quick here in the next couple months.
13th, Wednesday, this coming Wednesday.
This Wednesday's our
Yep.
first one. And then I think Mr. Bandersky wants to make a motion.
Well, unless there's some other comments that my fellow commissioners want to make, I will make a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 9:12 p.m.
Motion by Mr. Bandersky to adjourn, support by Mr. Bush. Oh, Mr. Hoffman, my hearing is going.
Confusing me too.
All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.